first story I've got is a little bit of heartbreaker, but we all know that just like people, pets very often can have tough lives. Since we live here, we know about hurricanes, and the word I've heard is this coming year, we're not going to have to worry much, just the way the weather pattern is, so that'll put us in a good mood as I read this. It's called Two Bobbies, a true story, so this just isn't all make-believe, of Hurricane Katrina, friendship, and survival. It's got a dog and a cat, and I have to tell you, in my family, my dog is scared of my cat. This is not true in this one. Before the story starts, they tell us neither Bobby the dog nor Bobcat has a tail. Neither one of them. And some say that's what brought them together. No one knows for sure how they met. Perhaps their owner had a soft spot for pets with no tails. But the two Bobbies, as they've now come to be known, were each exactly the friend the other needed at exactly the right time. This is their story. The city of New Orleans on the mighty Mississippi is a place many people and pets call home. Jamming with jazz and dressing up fancy for Mardi Gras, and all of you have just been there recently, so you know. It bustled with life, day and night. But on August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina bore down on the city and everyone who lived there, including a wisp of a cat and one puppy. Winds roared to 110 miles an hour. Rain pounded hard and fast. Strong winds pushed walls of water from the Gulf of Mexico into Lake Pontchartrain, and some of the levees holding back the lake gave way. Water poured into the city, deeper and deeper. People who had stayed through the storm were finally forced to leave their homes. They had to say goodbye to everything that they loved. Many were told they could not take their pets. Bobby and Bobcat were left behind. Bobby had been tethered with a length of chain. Bobcat stayed by her side. Together in the silent heat, they waited for help to come. Whew. After the storm, volunteers from across the country came to New Orleans to lend a hand. They brought food and water. They rescued people stranded on the roofs of their homes, and they rescued many animals. But with so much damage and confusion, the two Bobbies were not rescued. Their food and water gone, Bobby finally broke free. She dragged along the broken chain with Bobcat close behind her. In the early days after the hurricane, the two Bobbies tried to make their way around oily water littered with debris. After the waters receded, they traveled the buckled streets with no place to call home. Kelly, we're telling a rather sad story after a hurricane about a wonderful, Kelly, little cat called Bobcat and a dog. And this little dog named Bobby, neither one of them have tails. Wait till I finish. Month after month passed as Bobby and Bobcat wandered the devastated city. Their days and nights were filled with danger. Packs of hungry, homeless dogs roamed the streets, fighting smaller animals for food. Were Bobby and Bobcat chased away from any scraps they might have found? Oh, dear. With little food to eat or clean water to drink, Bobby's ribs began to show. Bobcat's brown sugar markings started to fade to a dull white. One day in January, 4 long months later, Bobby and Bobcat strayed into a job site. A construction crew hammered and sawed, fixing up a motel damaged by the hurricane. A worker's dog rushed over to play with Bobby. And the dog's owner, Rich, noticed Bobcat, too. He saw how thin the two strays were and began feeding them. He trimmed Bobby's chain, leaving enough to jingle on the ground because Bobcat liked to follow it. But every time Rich tried to touch Bobcat, Bobby growled. After a week of caring for the two Bobbies, Rich got some bad news when his boss came to the job site. He had given permission for one dog, but not two dogs, and a cat. He said Bobby and Bobcat had to go. Well, Rich was determined to take them to a safe place, but Bobby still growled whenever Rich got too near Bobcat. She would not let him pick her up or even touch her friend. So Rich rattled a bowl full of food. Bobby followed the food to Rich's van, and Bobcat followed Bobby. Rich drove them to a temporary shelter that Best Friends Animal Society had set up. The shelter was in a former video game arcade. The shelter was completely filled with homeless dogs and cats, but a volunteer welcomed them, even naming them Bobby and Bobcat for their bobbed tails. Oh, but they were placed in separate rooms. All night long, Bobby howled and barked, and Bobcat paced back and forth. No one could sleep with Bobby making such a ruckus. So volunteers made a large pen for her and put Bobcat in his small carrier inside Bobby's new cage. Bobby lay in front of Bobcat and whimpered. The volunteers opened the small cage to see what would happen. The two Bobbies touched noses. Together again at last. For the next few minutes, the volunteers studied Bobby and Bobcat. They noticed how Bobcat stayed close to Bobby. They saw how he walked with his neck stuck out and how he carefully lifted his front paws, placing them down as if he were unsure what he might step on. Someone waved a hand. Wonderful, thank you. In front of Bobcat's face. Bobcat did not jump back. Go ahead and be seated for me. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Michaela. Another volunteer waved her hand. Bobcat did not blink. Everyone was stunned. This is a true story of after Katrina. You may be familiar with it, I don't know, but it's about a dog and a cat. And they were left after the horrible hurricane. And they both have bob tails. But this, we find out, wait, Kelly. Bobcat was what, do you think?
Blind.
Blind, absolutely. All that time on their own, Bobby had been Bobcat's seeing eye dog. The volunteers and even an ace pet detective searched for their family with no success. 1 month later, that temporary place closed its doors. But Bobby and Bobcat still didn't have a home. There was only one thing left to try. The two Bobbies made a television appearance. Is that fantastic, on CNN? The very next day, the volunteers left New Orleans, and one of them drove Bobby and Bobcat to a sanctuary in Utah, the state of Utah, amazing, far away, where they would stay until a new family could be found. They were on their way west when the news came in. Hundreds of people wanted to adopt them. It would take a very special family to adopt them together. The volunteers made a list and invited everyone on it to come and meet the two Bobbies. Only Melinda and her Boston Terrier, Gus Gus, made the long trip to Utah. That night, Bobby and Bobcat had a sleepover with Melinda and Gus Gus in one of the cottages on the grounds. Would the two Bobbies choose Melinda? The next morning, everyone knew the answer, including Michaela. Bobby and Bobcat were stuck to Melinda like Velcro. They also liked Gus Gus, and he liked them. Finally, Bobby and Bobcat had found their new family. Now they live with Melinda, Gus Gus, and Amelia on a ranch in southern Oregon. What a distance. Oh, Bobcat has a window seat to sit in, and he likes to play with, listen to this, the robot vacuum. You seen those little round vacuums? You see this cat sitting on there. This is just so great. He turns it on all by himself. Bobby helps with the ranch chores. I think he kind of got the raw end of the deal there. But she does go along on horse rides, and on hot days she lounges in the frog and fairy pond. Kelly, you would like a fairy pond. At the end of every day, Bobby and Bobcat snuggle up together. They have toys and treats and lots of new friends, and even a camel. Best of all, they have each other. This one's called Let's Get a Pup, said Kate. Okay, you know, here's the family are going to be thrilled for her to have a puppy. But it says, the end of Kate's bed was a lonely place. Tiger the cat no longer slept there. Tiger had died, so there were only Kate's 2 feet to keep each other company. Now Kate woke to full summer with the sun pouring over the back fence. Let's get a pup, said Kate. Let's get a puppy, said Kate. What? A brand new one? Said a now wide-awake mom. If nothing else wakes up a mom, wanting a puppy might just wake her wide awake. With the wrapping still on? Added her breathless dad. Oh, pups don't come wrapped, replied Kate. Oh, I know they don't, said Dad. It's just a joke. Mom looked in the paper. It must be small, said Kate. Oh, and cute, said Dad. And get all excited, said Kate, and run around in circles, said Dad. Said Mom. Look, the rescue center, the center for dogs without a home, the center for dogs all alone. With their breakfast uneaten, they dressed and left immediately. At the rescue center, they found plenty of dogs without a home and lots of dogs all alone. They found big dogs and small dogs and snippers and sleepers and wire hairs and short hairs and scratchers and leapers. They found fighters and biters and growlers and snarlers and short dogs and dogs long and thin and dogs with their cheeks sucked in. They also found happy dogs, sad dogs, take-me dogs, and dogs who couldn't care less. They saw smelly dogs, fat dogs, lean and mean dogs, chew it up and spit it out at you dogs, and dogs like walking nightmares. And they saw Dave. Isn't he just great? Oh, Dave was so excited he came out sideways. He barked twice. Water flew off his tongue, and he turned a complete circle in the air. Oh, he was small, he was cute, he was brand new. Dave climbed right over the top of Kate, who briefly wore him like a hat. He's all that we want, said Kate. All that we came for, said Mom. Oh, we'll take him, said Dad. And then they saw Rosie, and she saw him. She was old and gray and broad as a table. It was difficult for her to get to her feet, but she stood, it seemed, almost politely. Her eyes watered, her ears went back, and she radiated good intention. My wish for you, said Dad, is that you could lie on someone's living room floor. Or on their couch, said Mom. Oh, or on someone's bed, said Kate. Mom's voice shook. We would take them all if we could, but what can we do? And with many a backward glance, they slowly walked away. At home, Dave was everything that a pup could be, and more. On his first night, he cried in his box. The next morning, Kate's Mom and Dad received a good licking. Dave was crying last night, so he slept with me, said Kate, but I didn't sleep. Neither did I, said Dad. I was wishing. Neither did I, said Mom. I was wishing. With their breakfast once again uneaten, they dressed and left immediately. At the rescue center, Rosie was waiting for them. Let's get you home, said Dad. Rosie was instantly at home. Her broad, heavy tail swept everything off the low table. I've seen a dog smelling a man, but never a man smelling a dog, said Kate's Mom. She needs a bath, said Dad. Now, Dad's wish has come true. Rosie is asleep on the living room floor with Dave to keep her company. Mom's wish has come true also. Now Rosie and Dave are asleep on the couch. And what about Kate's wish? Will it come true as well? Yes, Dave and Rosie will get to sleep on someone's bed. Kate puts her head on Rosie's stomach. She hears angry gurgles, squeaks and plops, lonely corkscrew sounds, and the pump, pump, pump of Rosie's heart like a big hollow engine room. Kate's feet are no longer lonely under the blankets. It seems like Dave and Rosie have always been there. Their weight is comfortable and reliable and will stop Kate's bed from floating away into the night. I think it's a wonderful little story.